Okay, tonight we're going to look at Persian history, as I've got the map here up on the board. Because as we look into chapter 7, we're going to talk about characteristics of the empires. If we don't know a little bit about the history, we won't understand what God is showing to us throughout the history that Daniel is being shown here. We won't be able to look back and see what these characteristics are or why these characteristics are being pointed out. Predictive prophecy is one of the greatest proofs of the Bible, that it is God's Word. And critics have attacked particularly the book of Daniel for this reason, that there is so much predictive prophecy in the book of Daniel, and it is so accurate that they despise the book. And so those who do not believe in God, do not believe in predictive prophecy, will attack the book. And we need to understand just how much of it is in here, and it will build our faith if we understand what God has shown the prophet hundreds of years prior to what was going to actually take place. Daniel didn't see these things come to pass. Many other individuals didn't see them come to pass. But we can now look back in history and see how accurate these things were actually prophesied about. And so it should build our faith in great abundance if we just pay a little bit of attention. So as we look at the chapter 7, if you read chapter 7, you'll see several things are talked about these kingdoms. One is talked about being like a lion, one is like a bear, one is like a leopard, and one is a great sea beast. So if you don't know a little bit about these kingdoms' histories, you're not going to know why these characteristics are being talked about. And so we're going to back up and talk a little bit about history so that when we get to those points, we can accurately discuss why God chose those characteristics of those particular animals to discuss those kingdoms and what was accomplished through those kingdoms. Now, you've heard me talk about Cyrus the Great several times, and this particular map here depicts some of Cyrus's conquering. I don't know how accurate it is, and that was my point when I found this particular map. But it shows that he conquered a vast area in a very short period of time, and thus he garnered or earned the name Cyrus the Great. Individuals that get that name or get that title of being the Great do so because they accomplish great things. Well, he accomplished that because he amassed a great empire in a very short period of time, and he did so by force in some instances, but a lot of times, as we talked about in the city of Babylon, he did so a lot by his means of speaking to the people and speaking to their needs and diplomacy is the term I'm trying to find, searching around here for. If you just stay with me long enough, I'll eventually get there. But yes, using diplomacy, and he was known as a very kind man and a kind conqueror in that sense. He wasn't a brutal individual. Wasn't known in history as being a brutal individual, as we would know of Nebuchadnezzar or many other individuals that we could talk about throughout history as being brutal in their conquering. Cyrus was not known to be brutal. He was known to be compassionate and tried to work things out, but he did conquer. He he was set out to conquer a vast area. So, as you can see, his he started out in Persia with the Persian army. He got the Medes with him in this area of Media, and then he began to push up the Fertile Crescent, and he took Babylon, as we know, and then pushed in the other areas. Now his son Cambyses took Egypt, and that was his accomplishment in adding that to the empire as well. So we see these dates, times and dates that Cyrus accomplished what he accomplished during his lifetime. Here's a little bit of the topography of the Persian Empire. You'll see the mountainous regions through here, all the way down into Persia, and then all the way across here into this area, pushing into India, and then what we know as the Himalayas and things of this nature. But nonetheless, this area throughout here is mountainous. Down into Persia, down here, this is also mountainous. So this is a mountainous region all the way through here. So we see how that lies. But I noticed something else when I started looking at this map that brought another passage of Scripture to my mind, which is something that we don't need to lose sight of, because the book of Daniel is about what? The kingdom of God, right? So as I started looking at names like this is the area of what? Elam. Parthians and Medes, Elamites, and the dwellers of Mesopotamia, which would be right through here. What verse of Scripture does that bring to your mind? Acts chapter 2 and verse 7. They all stand amazed when they began to speak in tongues. How hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born, Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the dwellers of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia and Egypt, and the parts of Libya and Cyrene, strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, we hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. Now, for years when I read that verse, I didn't know where most of these places were. But this shows the expanse of where all of these people came to worship God on that Pentecost, on that day, right? So if we go back to our map, and they heard God preached on that day when the kingdom was established. Okay, so we have Parthia, Elamites. If you look over here, this is what? Do you know what that island is? That's the island of Crete. Cyrene, over here. And when he talks about Asia, I'm not sure what they mean by Asia. I would think that they mean Far Asia, because once you step from this land here over to this land, where are you at? You're in Asia. All of this, from here all the way across here, this is all Asia. Jerusalem is in Asia. Okay? So I would think when he's talking about Asia, I'm thinking he means this area here, somewhere in the far Asian world, I would think is what they mean by that. I'm not sure. Okay, so he's talking about people from all over the place. And to look at another map, just a little larger, see how they would be from Asia in this area here. People from Rome would be from up here. So people that came together on that Pentecost that day, that heard the gospel preached by the mouth of Peter that first time when the church was established, which is really what we're talking about in the book of Daniel, is the kingdom was going to be established on that day. All these people were pulled together from all over that world, the then known world. All right, so this is the area, all of this area is what Persia would end up controlling, all the way back, all the way to the Indus River of India, close to India. They would control Egypt and Libya. This map shows them controlling Thrace all the way into Macedonia. I don't know that they ever went quite that far. They burned Athens down here. They burned Athens and they crossed over into this area, but they didn't really control it much. This map, I think, I don't know if they went up in this region or not, but they didn't really control much here because those individuals fought them bitterly. And it started a great deal of wars, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Okay, is there any questions about those maps? Okay, so Cyrus the Great, we talked about Cyrus the Great. He comes to power. He is the king that orders the return of the Jews, as we see in the scriptures there. In Ezra 1 through 4, he is the one that is prophesied by Isaiah years before. Okay, he ends up dying in battle. Now we talked about Cambyses, his son. He was the one that took Egypt and gained control of Egypt. He's also the one that halts the building in Jerusalem. In Ezra 4:17 through 24, we'll see that he stops that building because of some of the complaints that are raised against the Jews. And then while he is in Egypt, there is a uprising back in Persia, and he dies mysteriously. There's a quote about how Cambyses dies. Some people thought he committed suicide, but it's probably a misunderstanding of what was intended to be said. Most likely what has happened is that he died a death outside of battle. In other words, his horse fell and he got a mortal wound, and then he died because of that, or something of this nature, where that it was a mysterious death. He on his way back to Persia, he died a death that wasn't considered an honorable death. But I forgot the way the verbiage was and in the way it was written, but it was odd, and some people thought maybe he committed suicide, but other historians now are beginning to think, no, that wasn't correct. Not that probably any of you care, but nonetheless. Then this is where the bloodlines change. A distant relative now becomes the prince. He kills the usurper and gains the throne. Now, so he comes out of the woodwork and says, he's going to avenge the throne because of this usurper, and so he gains the throne and he takes the name of Darius the First. Now he gives permission to continue the building of the temple. He is the individual that does that. So we read that in Ezra. And he is an individual who spreads the empire to the widest extent that the empire spreads to. Now his son, Xerxes, is someone that we know something about. And he does several things. He is the husband of Esther, so we read about him in Esther. And he, as you read of him in Esther, he's not the kind of individual that seems to be real strong, does he? You know, he has people that rises up against him, and he has to ask other people, what should I do about this and what should I do about that? He doesn't seem to have a mind of his own so much, right? And then when they want to take care of it, he says, well, here's my signet ring. You figure out what to do. Mordecai, you figure out what to do, and then you take care of it, right? This is not a strong leader. It really isn't. So, I mean, it worked out good for the Jewish people at that point in time, but nonetheless, him himself, as far as for the Persian Empire, he's not really a strong individual. One of the other things that he is most famous for is he burned Athens. He is the individual that sends the troops into Athens, and under the guise of he wants to break the Greeks back, he sends them in there, but instead of breaking the spirit of the Greeks, what does he do? Anybody know? He stirs them up. He just makes them angry.
The different city-states come together and form an alliance.
Yeah, the city-states come together. This is what actually causes the city-states to start banding together, and they form an alliance against him. And they start pushing back the Persian armies on all sides and on all borders. And it becomes a battle cry. Just like we would say, remember the Alamo, they would say, remember the burning of Athens. For years and years and years, that would be their battle cry. Okay? And he's not well respected. Obviously, he is murdered in his own bed. That's not really a good way to go. You know what I'm saying? You know, if you're going to die, die in battle. You know, something. If you're going to be a warrior, you want to die in battle. You know, you don't want to die in your bed. I mean, get killed in your bed. That's the worst thing that can possibly happen to a warrior. You know. Anyway, okay. So his son, Artaxerxes, succeeds to the throne. He sends Ezra. We see that in Ezra 7. And he sends Nehemiah later to build the walls. So, we're thankful for his foresight in helping out the Jews in that. His son, Xerxes II, is assassinated by his brother. So we see there's turmoil in the kingdom at that point. Now there's a lot of turmoil in this next little section. It's because there's fighting among the kingdom, and so there's a man by the name of Ochus who rebels against this brother of Xerxes II, and he adopts the name of Darius, and He calls himself Darius II, of course. Of course, now this is now a new bloodline. You know, new bloodline. We've already had a change of bloodline. Now we got another change of bloodline. And so they don't know a lot about him other than the Medes rise up against him in 409. All right, his son, Artaxerxes II. There's Cyrus the Younger attempts to assassinate him and seize the throne, but he is crushed in this battle. So again, there's still turmoil in the kingdom. People are trying to take over rule, so there's the kingdom's not real strong. The leadership in the kingdom is not real strong at this point. Again. But he finds other people to rule through, and he manages by spreading gold and things around, and some influence in Greece. And so he has a little bit of peace with Greece, so he gains some influence there, and so there's a marked increase, at least in strength and influence. His son, Artaxerxes III, comes up, and he gains the throne by a general massacre of his family. You see a tendency here of a lot of bloodshed amongst the thrones. Okay, if you think this is bad, you wait till we get to what happens in Egypt. It's much worse. Okay, he tries to take over Egypt, but fails in his first expedition. But in his second expedition, he is successful, but it's a bloody, very bloody conquest. But because of its ugly nature, because it's such a ruthless reign that he has, one of his ministers, a eunuch by the name of Boagus, I can't even say his name. He poisons the king to get rid of him. So once again, we have a change. So Artaxerxes the third now succeeds to the throne, but most likely the eunuch Bagoas, there we go, is most likely the individual that's pulling all the strings. And he poisons a bunch of the members of the royal family to ensure his position. So he's still doing his dirty deeds as he goes on. As you see down here, there's two satrapies, and basically that means two kings or two major generals, or whatever, however you want to, two major leaders in the kingdom, however you want to call it, two major areas, decide to revolt. And so he has a lot of trouble. And to add to these troubles, the king of Macedon, Philip II, now has crossed over into Asia, and he is sends his general Parmenion, and that's in the spring of 336. And several of the Greek cities have now have sided with this invader. So Greece now has decided they're not just pushing back the invader, now they're invading the land of the Persians. Okay. All right. So the Persian, as we see here, the Persian nobility is divided about what they need to do. And so this one individual, satrap of Armenia, he becomes a very powerful and formidable warrior. And so Bagoas, if I can remember to say his name correctly, is forced to kill him as well. All right, so we get down here a little further. Finally, we get someone who is strong enough to execute and kill the eunuch, Bagoas, and take care of him. And so we have Darius III that now comes to power. Now he is a strong king. He unites the kingdom, and now he has a little bit of a respite. He gets some relief because Philip II of Macedon is murdered. And that ties in with what we'll see under the Greek Empire here shortly. And Parmenion is pushed back a little bit. He has a Greek mercenary general under Persian service. So during those periods of time, you know, you can, just like today, you can buy mercenaries. You know, and so they had Greek mercenaries that would fight Greek or in this case they weren't really they were Macedonian people, but we consider them Greeks, and they were fighting against each other on behalf of the Persians. And then we get down to Alexander III, which was known as the Great. He joins Parmenion, and then we will find that Alexander the Great launches a large campaign against Darius III, and he ends up killing him, and we'll see that when we look at the Greek Empire. And so then that falls, the Persian Empire falls. So as we look at the Persian Empire is a combination of two groups. They are the Medes and the Persians. The Medes at first were more powerful than the Persians, but in a short period of time, the Persians become more powerful than the Medes. But if it wasn't for the Medes to begin with, the Persian would never have come to power. So that truly the Persian, when you look at the Persian Empire, it is the combination of both of them, the Medes and the Persians. And as we look at these peoples, and if you remember the topography of the area, these are mountain people. These are people from the hills. If you look throughout this whole region here, this region is from Persepolis here, even in Susa, is right there on the edge of the mountains. And so these people come from the hill country, and so they are, so the Medes and the Persians both are that type of people. They have that much in common. They know how to survive in the mountains. They live in the hills. They have that type of clan mentality as far as how to live in the hills. So that's one of the things that draws them together. And so they cooperate with one another, and they have a lot in common in that sense. And so that is part of the reason why that they cooperate so well together and made the kingdom into a powerful kingdom for as long as they did. Now, if we push into Greek history for just a few moments, we'll see Philip the Second of Macedon. And we've already talked about Philip, but we're going to back up a little bit and talk about Philip some more and then go on. We'll talk about Philip's strengths. Philip came to power in Macedonia, and he proved to be both a diplomat and a warrior. Those are good things for a king, as we've seen many, many times before. It's in that era, in that period of time, they had to be good warriors. They also have to be good diplomats. Actually, for any kingdom, if you think about it, even for our nation, a leader needs to know how to hold his ground and not let other people push him around. But if we can, work together with other people and be diplomatic about it, then that's what we need to do. We don't want to, be brutal or unkind and things of that nature, just like every Christian. But at the same time, if somebody's going to come over and, as people will do, as nations do, they will take advantage of you at every point that they can, and some people just have to be taught a lesson, and that's just the unfortunate thing that we learn from history. People will steal, kill, and do all kinds of things, and if a leader is not willing to protect his people, he's not worth his salt. So that's just the way it is. Okay. He has two enemies on both sides of him, and he wins in some very decisive battles, very difficult battles on those two sides. And so he starts pushing out a large landmass that he has control of. Now, he devises this Macedonian phalanx. If you will see, as you see below here, how this thing works, and this is where I'll have to quit, but I want you to understand how this works. They have long poles that they lay on each other's shoulder, and as they would advance on another army, these poles would be used, these lances would be used as the offensive weapon, the main offensive weapon. And it worked very well in keeping everyone at bay. Horses, and they even use them against elephants, by the way. And if an individual would fall, because you can tell someone coming up with a sword can't get anywhere near them, and so they would advance forward, push forward in their array, as it were. They were quite lethal, and the other army was not able to get very close to them. So this Macedonian phalanx, as it is, was very effective in that type of warfare at that period of time. Now, they still had short bronze swords. This is the Bronze Era, and they had bronze swords. They still had short swords and helmets and a certain amount of armor on as well. But foot soldiers was the main portion of the army that was used at that time. So with that, I will stop, and we will continue on next week. Thank you very much for your kind attention.